In this elementary school, again, seen huge shift in dynamics as well. But staff and principals that are pretty open to partnerships. They've had a number of different kinds of projects here. And it's so close to MCC. Like, why would this not be a site where we have lots of activity happening? So close to MCC. So,
Right.
what kind of regular partnerships could be developed that
Yeah.
would offer some cool stuff for students, but both students, right? Get
Yeah.
ours engaged. And I know we have service learning, we have some faculty that do that. But here, because of the density, the school district was pretty landlocked, and yet they were seeing some challenges with enrollment numbers increasing. And again, you got multifamily. And that principal is really, really keen on community partnerships.
Okay.
Just very open to it, volunteers in the classroom, and does just a wealth of programming to support his families. Next neighborhood we're going to cruise through. Boulder neighborhood, predominantly Latino. People's sense of place is really strong in some of these communities. And so again, for our staff and faculty to think of where our students come from, if they've grown up in this tight-knit community, and go to a school where it's, again, very tight-knit, very homogenous, and all of a sudden they walk onto Southern and Dobson's campus.
Right.
It's such a jarring,
Yeah.
overwhelming experience, and I think we underestimate how difficult that might be. Again, lots of great families that live here that have been here for generations, very much involved in politics. I think was Arizona's attorney general for a while. In any event, they named it after him, but it is one of the few that actually has a charter school right here on the campus.
Okay.
It's an arts academy. Serves again a really diverse population. This is another opportunity to create connections. You've got a ready-made site here that has a lot of traffic.
Right.
So how is it that we sort of take advantage of these sites, right? And as we cross here, so a lot of the families there will either go to that arts academy, which is a charter school, or they'll cross the train tracks here and walk over to this elementary school. So you've got industrial on one side, elementary school on the other. Again, serving a really diverse population. The demographics here have changed significantly over time. I think the last time I checked, there were about 85% Hispanic.
Hispanic, yeah.
Majority of students would be qualifying for free and reduced lunch. And Mesa Public Schools is one of the biggest feeders for our college. Way back in the day, it was primarily retirees, but it has really turned into affordable housing for a lot of families. And in this particular area, predominantly Hispanic families, Spanish speaking. There's a migrant parent family program with Mesa Public Schools, led by this fabulous woman who goes out and does community meetings for parents. They'll meet at like the community center of some of these locations. This type of housing has become affordable housing for a lot of families. And so again, think of the sense of place. This is where students come from, and you have a very tight-knit community. We just have to really be cognizant of that. So how do we approach our sense of connection, sense of belonging? Everybody talks about that.
Right.
But unless you know where our students come from, how do you do that effectively? Another elementary school called Holmes Elementary School. And again, that's a school that has seen huge shifts over the last couple of decades in terms of their demographics. They're probably about 85% Hispanic, large percentage of students that come from homes where English isn't the primary language. It's not to say that they don't end up leaving with English skills, but the families they come from. So how is it that we communicate and really prove to families that MCC is a good choice for their kids? Mm-hmm. So you've got multifamily, a couple single family homes, and then this is operated by Community Bridges. Huge nonprofit. They operate statewide, and it's a lot of assistance for those experiencing drug addiction. And so I'm not sure if it still operates the same way, but they had some programs specifically here for pregnant women or postpartum women with small children that were trying to get into recovery. And so it's just always fascinating. You won't necessarily see this in more affluent communities or the further east you get, but here you have just such a mix all on one street. So you have a drug addiction facility, you've got apartments, you've got single family homes, all, seeking to coexist. This is Mesa Can. It's operated by A New Leaf, which is a very large comprehensive social service agency. A New Leaf has 30 different programs ranging from housing to community services, health. And they took over or asked to take over Mesa Can, which is Mesa's CAP agency. A lot of large cities have a CAP agency, and it's the recipient of federal funds for things like emergency rent assistance, emergency utility assistance. So those programs are run out of here. One of the other programs that a New Leaf has is the Men's Center. So it's a shelter for homeless men, probably 92 beds. The city has funded a lot of support. They receive support from a lot of the East Valley cities, so it's supposed to serve the region. They have a congregate living area, dining hall, meals. I think it's lunch and dinner entirely provided by volunteers 365 days a year. Even more so, they have one building that has a tiny little computer lab, some resources so that when the men are successfully able to transition out, I mean, you can imagine that employment is an issue, not the most convenient of locations, but certainly a population that is in need of support. The whole issue of NIMBY, nobody wants something like this in their backyard, right? So the siting was intentional.
Sure.
To avoid too much public backlash, and certainly the facility it's serving its purpose. But transportation could be an issue. It's really up here at the edge of nowhere. A lot of the guys rely on bikes to get around. So that's the living area, the main building. And then the one that has that peaked roof is the dining hall.
Okay.
But this building here, again, there's a small space, a couple of computers. And if you think about acquiring a job these days, the computer skills and online application. And so,
Things on
again, sort of potentials for areas where we might be of support and assistance. You know, it's interesting. I do a lot of work with our nonprofits, and very few of them say that education is their mission, right? They each have a singular mission to either help families or homelessness or whatever the case may be. And yet to get people to break out of their cycles, education is often such a key part of that. And so how do we connect with that sector who are already connecting with people who very likely are in need of what we have to offer? So we'll drive by another New Leaf facility that has a shelter for homeless families. And it's an entire complex that they've developed that also includes permanent supportive housing, workforce development. There's a computer lab to help people, re-engage. And so how do we look at that possibility as well? So this is the backside of the complex that I was telling you about, a New Leaf, these big branded buildings. And so it was built in phases, each with a little bit of a different intent. So you've got family shelter, permanent supportive housing for people that just really need ongoing support. The philanthropy office is located here. They have a workforce training center. Big capital campaign. It's really an interesting story. So there were some families in Mesa that saw a need for a shelter for families in crisis. Went to the city for some CDBG, community development block grant funding, federal funding, to upgrade some of the facilities. And the city really challenged them, like, how about just start from scratch? And so they did this entire capital campaign, got low-income housing tax credits, and built that entire complex. And Mesa is fortunate this way. I think people underappreciate it. There are some really civic-minded, socially aware, philanthropic community leaders. They've partnered extensively with the city. So now they've grown 30 different programs, including 2 domestic violence shelters, one in Mesa, one on the west side. All right.
Well, thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
The biggest community need that people need is getting job ready with a resume or mock interviewing, even interview clothing. But We also have a lot of people that come here for career pathway change in their careers. So we offer training here on site.
Life has become increasingly difficult. Not only has the pandemic unfortunately affected our families, but inflation has is costing families. Let's see, pay raises are going up by 3 to 4%, but our families' cost of living is going up 7 to 10%. Just buying food and bringing a healthy meal to the table is increasingly difficult. So our families are finding the need to again compound that global need to receive services but needing more. So when they're walking in our doors, through that conversation, they're telling us, I need more than just the utility assistance. I need more than just the rental assistance. I need for you to help me with basic needs. I don't have any shampoo. I don't have any laundry detergent. I don't have any toilet paper. And I know it seems insignificant, but to those families who cannot pay those utility bills, those rental bills, the basic needs are also unfortunately become very extreme. I would tell our leaders that more funding for infrastructure. We provide a strong foundation for those families who need, but we need more dollars to pay. Why? Because what we've been seeing here at our community services division is that we're bringing in more services. We're partnering with more partners to holistically help our families because not only do they need help with food and utility and rent, but they also are seeking additional services. Community legal services comes in house now to help those who are fighting with landlord needs. People need to have access to how do I apply for access? How do I apply for um, the Affordable Care Act? Those basic needs, whether it's a barrier because English is a second language. Um, our leaders need to know that fundamentally bringing in more resources to a one-stop shop methodology allows our families to come in to a trusted entity and then get all of those needs met.
After COVID, the industries that got hit the hardest that we saw, people that were working in the hospitality industry, transportation industry, um, getting getting them back into the workforce because they were either working from home and they were getting comfortable, and then now they're getting back into the workforce where they're not job ready, and they struggled with interviewing. These all these The struggles also included rental and utility assistance where they got behind on their rent. And the beauty of this building is we offer that service here downstairs.
We're very, very proud of the vital services that we bring to the community. Our assets to opportunity programs offer our families who struggle with basic post-secondary education, and we allow through match savings to help those families pay for post-secondary education. Not only does it allow those of low to moderate means, but those who are here are immigrants that are DACA, are dreamers that don't have access to FAFSA because they're not U.S. citizens. This is an opportunity for them to utilize these funds to pay for their own education. And it can be across the board. Not everybody is seeking a bachelor's degree. So a trade school that pays well, a community college that allows an opportunity for you to get an associate or a certificate, that bachelor's degree that will allow the income to grow. We offer an 8-to-1 match for our education piece across the board. And then we offer a 3-to-1 for what I call our entrepreneurs that are not savvy business people. So even small businesses in the city of Mesa are allowed to grow through this ATO program.
The biggest obstacle for families to get back into the workplace is transportation. A lot of times they take public transportation, or they're borrowing families' cars, or they're walking. Transportation continues to be a barrier. We also have a lot of families who live with other family members. And so getting their own place is a challenge. And this is when we ask for those demographics and we ask the question, are you currently renting excuse me, or are you living with family, or you're in a shelter? A lot of times they say I'm living with family until I can get back on my feet, and that's been a challenge.
The most significant difficulties we've been seeing recently is the number of continued crisis pieces that our families are needing. Not only can families walk into our doors and receive utility and rental assistance, but we're finding that our families are either in need of basic needs, in need of food insecurity, so food, they need better paying jobs. So the need has expanded and become a more robust need, not just I need my utilities paid or my rental paid. I need to know how I'm going to get to work. I need to know how I'm going to pay for my daycare, and I need to know how I'm going to bring food to the table. So, what our families are telling us is that uh, their need is not complete with just a utility payment, not just complete with the rental payment, but it's more than that.
To not give up, and to know that there are resources out there to assist them and to come in, and even if they are not job searching, and a little bit of mentoring and coaching, and let them know that somebody's on their side, and just that we're here to listen to them, and just get them back on track. When they leave our workforce center, they're overwhelmed with all these resources, and that's we know that we did our job because they're going to utilize those resources.
I think a lot of Mesa's success historically can be tied to the strong relationship that this community has always had to education. That's what brought my family to Mesa. Back in 1949, my father, who was a school principal, came to town to pick up some family that was here for health reasons when Mesa Community College was a brand new institution. And my brother was one of the first students there. And back then, it was literally surrounded by sheep. It's hard to imagine that now when you look at the intersection of Dobson and Southern, right? It's one of the busiest intersections anywhere. Mesa was very, very proud that it had a college. Education generally, and Mesa Community College specifically, have got deep roots in this community. Education is really important. It's part of Mesa's core values. But that's not to say that we don't need to improve in some areas. And one of the areas that we really underperform in is higher education attainment. That's why this Achieve 60 AZ goal that the state has is just tailor made for a community like Mesa. When you're talking to kids who are in 8th, ninth, 10th grade, they say, oh, yeah, sure, I'm going to college. A lot of those kids, hopefully, we're not doing as good as we can on getting them high school graduation. But even after that, there's just a huge drop off in the kids who aspire to have higher education, but then we don't close the loop. And so this is something that the Mesa City government has been very intentional in addressing. That's why you've seen the higher education initiatives in inviting Benedictine University, Arizona State University, creating the Mesa College Promise, because Mesa Community College really is the tool that we need to fully utilize much better. Well, so given this challenge we have of a community of underperforming when it comes to higher education, I was all ears, as I was at national meetings and hearing about other mayors who had college promise programs in their communities, particularly California. There's some state funding for it. Community college is affordable in the first place. I mean, it really is the best bargain when it comes to higher education. And you get them the Pell Grants and everything else that they're eligible for. Typically, the gap between that assistance and what it takes to get out of the registrar's office with a class schedule is not a big gap. And so to me, it was always a very doable goal to launch a college promise program. I knew we could raise the money. I did not think that money was going to be the barrier. Raising money, I tell people that raising money for the college promise program is the easiest thing I've done as mayor, because all of these wonderful companies that are now standing in line to come to Mesa, world-class companies, Fortune 50, Fortune 5 companies. I think a lot of people coming to the Valley of the Sun, they just the Phoenix metro area is huge, right? It's one of the biggest metros in the country. Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the United States. So it's easy to think that Mesa, Chandler, Glendale, Peoria is just a set of stoplights, right? And there's really not a distinct character between any of those communities. That's not true. Mesa has a different quality. I mean, I'm not saying we're better than other places. I'm saying that, but there is a distinct character about Mesa. Mesa is different. And as I indicated earlier, education is, I think, one of the things that really defines Mesa is a commitment to education. Public schools in Mesa are more supported than they are in other parts of the valley. I think it's important when you come to Mesa that you there's a little bit of history here. Mesa Community College, education generally in Mesa is a priority, and it's something that we are very proud of, and it's something that we continue to be worthy of pride of. I think we have a deep bench in Mesa when it comes to community leadership and community engagement. And so, I mean, when you're looking for volunteers to fill in the gaps, Mesa is a great combination of people who need help and people who feel compelled to provide help and have the resources to do that. So it is kind of an embarrassment of riches. We can I can fill a room with volunteers. When Mesa Public Schools has a literacy program, we're gonna the sign up sheet for volunteers is going to be full very quickly. Well, I'm very proud of Mesa's history when it comes to education, but I'm almost pessimistic when it comes to its future because we are not where we need to be right now, and we need to change that trend. So I'm really hopeful that we can turn things around. There's lots of explanations, post-pandemic and economic reasons, and I mean, community college enrollment is down everywhere, isn't it? But we don't want that to be the case in Mesa. That this is who we are. This is in our DNA, and I'm anxious to help encourage and be part of the solution to get enrollment up, to get this to be what all families in Mesa, that this is one of the first things they think of as an option for their children after high school.